Great.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. If you call the roll, please.
Dave Waddington,
Here.
Dan Delahunt,
Here.
John Fike,
Here.
Walt Matthews, Dr. William Siemens,
Here.
and Greg Peugeot.
He was excused?
Yes, he
Okay.
let me know he would be absent.
Okay, if you've seen the minutes, hopefully, of the October 20th meeting, any corrections? If none, I need a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes. Okay, this is an adjudication hearing. Two of the items are tabled from last month, but anyone who wishes to speak and give testimony is going to need to be sworn in. So if you would raise your right hand and repeat, "I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth."
I promise to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
You are sworn in. Okay, the first item is tabled from last month. It's 3201 West Monroe Street. The zoning variance for a monument sign exceeds the maximum sign square footage requirements and encroaches 10 feet in the required front yard setback in the residential district. Is there anything that you have additional for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Again, this is the variance to construct a monument sign for the health department. The parcel is currently zoned residential 2-family, and the board at the last meeting asked for an update to the information to understand better where the placement would be. On the right image is staff's attempt to show where that would line up, and you can tell that the built environment of the structure on the other corner being right at the lot line is one of the biggest reasons that's driving their need to put the sign closer to the right of way. If they were pushed back to the typical setback of a residential 2-family area, the driver wouldn't be able to see that health department entryway signage until they are almost too late to turn when coming from the east going westbound. A site plan was provided. On the left, it shows the 5-foot setback from the right-of-way and where the sign is located, and a symbol rendering was prepared to show how landscaping and tree buffers to the neighboring residential property would be applied to this parcel. In addition to what you see here, there will be a public sidewalk leading to the health department. So the idea is to open up the views of this corridor, so the health department has a really broad entrance. It has public accessible walkability and driver visibility to see that entryway signage. The front and the back of the signage has been updated to be a very simple graphic to welcome guests and visitors into the Erie County Health Department. This is the complete update of the new information received by staff since the previous application. We also note that the sign will not be internally illuminated, and planning staff continues to support the requested variance at 3201 Monroe Street, parcel 59-01180, and suggests the following conditions: that all necessary permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and planning departments prior to construction, and landscaping is not placed in the public right-of-way. That the only note there is from their site plan sketch, there's some landscaping that goes across the property line, so we would recommend that they keep that within the property line.
Okay, we have the staff's comments. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this request? And if so, you'll need to come to the podium, state your name and your address. You don't have to, but okay, hearing none, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against this request? Okay. If none, we'll come back to the board. Questions?
So that sign is going to be 5 feet from the sidewalk? Is that what I'm seeing on the
Yes.
on the drawing there?
I understand why you want to put it so close to the sidewalk. I still have an issue with getting so close to the sidewalk. Again, I went back out there, and that Lions Park sign, a couple of doors down, I think is at least 8 feet off of the sidewalk. It just seems as though it's going to be crowding the sidewalk to such a degree that I would prefer to see it back a little bit, but I don't know how everybody else feels. How far off are you, what does it say off the property line to the west?
10 feet from the west.
Oh, 10 feet, okay.
You probably don't want it any further, any closer to that, into that
building,
property
doesn't
line.
it? Yeah, they're pretty close on that one, too.
I drove out there, coming from east to west, driving 35 miles an hour, because I wanted to see, if I was driving along, when I would see the sign, not being there. If it was back, I think, where the house is, it would be, you would miss it. But where code would have you, I don't think you would. But I could be convinced that if we were a little more forward than the 15 feet, if like we were 10 feet, I think that would be more palatable to me.
What are you?
I would
doing
think
with
consistent with the other monument sign along the street with the Lions Park sign, if you were consistent with that would work.
And I don't have, I didn't take a tape measure, so I'm not sure, but I know it's farther back from the sidewalk than 5 feet.
So just, we look at you to see, would 10 feet be an agreeable, alternative?
The Lions Park sign's about 8 feet back, depending on what part of the sign you measure, but the thing that's actually,
Not the Lions, I took it from the base of,
it's the base of the sign,
Right.
about
Yeah.
8 feet. And if the commission would be inclined, that 8 feet would be okay with us, we could live with that.
Thoughts?
I would make a motion that we allow this variance, although changing the distance from the sidewalk to equal that of the Lions Park monument sign.
Okay, to the front base of the sign, the lower piece there.
Correct.
Right.
To 8 feet from the sidewalk.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions on the motion? None, call the roll.
Dan Delahunt,
Yes.
John Fike,
Yes.
Dr. Siemens.
Yes.
The variance as adjusted is approved. The next item on the agenda is again tabled from last month. It's 630 Cold Creek Boulevard. It's to allow 3-foot 10-inch encroachment into the minimum side yard setback in a residential district. If the staff has anything additional for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last meeting showed from the applicant that they had a survey submitted to the board that the building was actually on the lot line and not 1 foot 10 inches away from the lot line. And the board directed staff to meet with the applicant and look for solutions to the situation. The staff met with the applicant the following week on October 26th and discussed several issues with the applicant. Because the building is on the lot line and their design would have the roof go over the lot line, they would then be encroaching onto property that's, off of their property. That would create some building code concerns. They may not be able to get an occupancy permit because they can't have part of their building on someone else's property. Also, the building division, our chief building officer explained to them that if they were close to the property line within 3 feet, they have specific fire protocol they'd have to follow regardless as to whether the parcel next to them would be developable at all. So just understanding that we were trying to help them understand all the factors of the case so they could make the decision whether they were going to alter the building so they didn't need the variance or what they needed to move forward to do. The second point that we talked with them about is that if they did alter the building so they had 5 foot of setback, they would not need to come back to BZA if that was an option. And then we also discussed with them replanting the city property where the foliage was removed, and engineering staff followed up with a list of plantings and agreed to allow them to remedy that in the spring. We also advised that they could request the item be tabled at BZA if they weren't ready to make a decision by the next meeting, which is today. We didn't hear from them on that or not. They asked that, they say that they wanted some time to talk amongst, themselves and their contractors about the potential solutions. And then it was observed that work on the structure continued to occur over the weekend of October 28th. So another stop work order was issued on the property on October 31st. Follow-up phone call was received by the applicant's father, Mr. Eric Mingus, on October 2nd. And I talked with Mr. Mingus and laid out a recap of that, of what you've got here in front of you, of what we talked about with Gavin, the potential options they have to move forward, making sure they really understood the implication of the fire and building safety codes that they might be facing, even if BZA was inclined to grant them a 0-foot setback and allow their building to be on the property line, that the roof line coming over produced other concerns. So we recounted the conversation, let them know if they need more time, just that we're here to help and please let us know. And also, we've received several phone calls from community members that have reached out with concerns about the property encroaching on the reserve area, and asking us to hold them accountable for encroaching on the reserve area. And that, I just want to make sure you were aware of that. They told me they did not feel comfortable coming to the meeting and stating that on the record. Building staff and engineering staff were in those conversations, and since the conclusion of the update is that, given the survey information submitted at the October BZA meeting showing that the structure foundation is on the property line, and absent any additional information provided since the last meeting, staff continues to oppose the requested variance at 630 Cold Creek Boulevard, parcel 60-00043-010.
My question is, the variance that was requested, which was for 1 foot 2 inches,
Is no longer relevant because it's,
Correct.
yes.
does it need to be resubmitted with the correct information, or we don't need to do that, we'll just,
So they were considering whether they demolished a little bit of the structure to back it off the line, and whether they would need a variance if they could do 6 inches or a foot or 3 feet or whatever. If it's up to 5 feet, they wouldn't need a variance. If it's at least 3 feet, they don't need the extra fire code precautions. If it's closer, then they're going to need the fire code precautions, the fire safety precautions. So they have not indicated to us what they would want to resubmit, because even if the variance was granted at 0, they will have building code issues with the roof line going over the property with the current design. So they have to submit to the building division their plan to change the building design in order to remedy the situation, or how they want to proceed, and we have not heard from them.
okay. All right, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this request? If so, you'll please come to the podium and give us your name and address.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Murray. I'm an attorney friend of the Minguses. They were a little exasperated with this process, I think.
Can you give
so-
them your address,
Oh,
Mr. Mark?
yep, sorry, 708 Meadowlark, Huron, 44839. So they asked me to come and speak on their behalf. So in getting the whole story of everything that's happened, it appears to me, at least, that a lot of the city's opposition, a lot of what's gone on here has become a little personal. They've gotten, so for example, the city came to them with a silt fence request. In other words, to put up a silt fence during construction for for Gavin's house and for 2 other properties they were building. No one else in the neighborhood got silt fence requests. It was just them. Of course, then Eric brought that up at this last meeting, and then all of a sudden, everybody else is getting silt fence letters, calling him and saying, hey, why did we get the silt fence? So it's pretty clear that they got the silt fence because the city didn't want to look like they were selectively enforcing the silt fence requirements. He also drove around the town and found a bunch of, pretty much every construction site he found did not have a silt fence. What I'm hearing are a lot of arguments that, to me, don't speak to the variance itself. So he has an irregularly shaped lot. Okay, one side is angled on the creek. That alone, I would think, would be grounds for, hardship variance. The other big issue I see is that the lot next to it is not buildable. So there's simply no reason to strictly enforce the setback requirement on that side. The fire code paperwork that the city provided to Gavin specifically says that those requirements, and correct me if I'm wrong, but those requirements are for if the structure is within 10 feet of another structure. So if the lot next to it is not buildable, then there clearly will be no issue. There won't be a structure within 10 feet on that side. I know there's an argument that, if the board lets them get this variance, then someone else in another subdivision might come along and say, well, hey, you let them do it, so why don't you let us do it? But I think there's a pretty clear answer. You can go back to anyone who's making that argument and say, hey, we granted the variance in this instance because we didn't need to strictly enforce the setback on that side because the lot next to it's not buildable. So at the last meeting, the city made a public access argument too, saying, they're worried about public access to the property. I don't know if you mentioned that in the notes. But there's clearly not a public access issue with this property. The creek lot borders the roads. You can clearly just access that lot from the road. And anyone from, any member of the public is trying to access that lot. If Gavin's house is in the way, then that means they're going through Gavin's lot in order to get to the creek lot. So I think that's a disingenuous argument. But then in the very next breath, the city argued that they might put up a fence. So I'm not sure which one it is. Are they trying to let people in or keep them out? And to me, it just speaks to the fact that they're not really concerned about public access, or they're certainly not going to build a fence. I don't know of any subdivisions where they built a fence along a creek in a So to me, it sounds like they're just throwing the book at them because they're a little upset because of the permitting infractions, which, there are clearly other remedies for that. I'm simply asking the board to evaluate the variance on its merits. So there's a good reason to grant it because there's an irregularly shaped lot, and there's really no reason to strictly enforce it on the other side because the other lot's not buildable. To me, it's really that simple, and I know the Minguses would like to just put all the other stuff aside, cooperate with the city going forward and get this house built. Because I think if you've gone out and looked at that lot, that situation with the two lots between, there's the location of the house as is simply inconsequential. There's plenty of space there. It's not going to hurt anyone. I just don't think there are any valid arguments to deny the variance.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the request?
Sir, could you define that on the sheet? Thank you.
Okay.
Eric Mingus, 708 Cold Creek Boulevard. I'm Gavin's dad. It was brought up about how it was wrote 12 feet on the original drawing. So I was here to clarify where that came from. I caught it after I sent, this is what I sent to Alex. So I went back, tried to trace back how it did get off that much. And I went back, the driveway was 25 foot, and I wrote it on, being an irregular shaped lot, it's not like a rectangle, so it's hard to draw it. So I drew it on a piece of graph paper and then tried to place the house on the graph paper to fit that angle. So with every block being 5 feet, I missed one block on the driveway side. So instead of 20 feet, according to the drawing, I had 25 foot, but it was really only 20 feet worth on the graph paper when I first drew it out. So that shoved it 5 feet. So that made the 12 turn to 7. And then the other thing I had was once the masons were having trouble laying it out, I went out there, we found the 3 pins. We found the 2 in the back and the 1 in the front, right in front of the can on the north side. The one that I couldn't find was the one to the south on the creek side where the sidewalk ends, because the development had poured that sidewalk, so we couldn't find that pin. So I got a pulled measurements best I could, got to the sidewalk, couldn't find the pin. Being a builder, I know he's getting it thrown at him because we're builders, but Gavin's not a builder. I'm a builder. He's learning, but he's young. So my first instinct was, okay, can't find the pin. They must have wiped it out when they did the sidewalk. It's got to be right to the edge of the sidewalk, because that's where, when somebody pour, you pour up to your property line. So I didn't know that that pin would actually be 18 inches in from the edge of the sidewalk. So I actually, when I pulled the string for that line, originally I went off the edge of that sidewalk. So that pushed me another 18 inches back, but on that angle, that changes it a lot by 18 inches, shoving that string over that close to the front of the house. That tightened it right down to within a foot. And I had the mayor out, Mr. Brady. He was nice enough to come out and look at it in person and see like where my discrepancy was, because once we found the pins, I had Alex Etchell come out and find the pins for me, the 3 pins, and we couldn't find the other one, and there was a wood stake at the end of that sidewalk. So I just took it for granted that that was it. Being a builder, I mean, you almost just see a stake at the sidewalk, makes sense? So I just took off with that. So that part was a mistake on my behalf, but only human made a mistake. I should have measured it better, I guess, or pulled from both pins, in hindsight. But now in hindsight, it's too late, because now it's there. Now we got the difficulty. So that's why we're just asking. It's not like the whole building is along the property line solid, and it's not. And it ain't like we've tried to not help. I actually went over there. We spent $6,000, demoed that whole bump out that was the issue, because of the access thing. They wanted us to move. They want us to move the whole building, but they were really concerned, it seemed, about the walkout, him stepping out his house onto the reserve, which every house in town, he's going to step out of his house onto private property, public property. But every house in town, you step out your front door, you step right onto public property. I mean, it's really no different. But even with that being said, his walkout was actually, you see the bump out where it was originally, and the walkout really, he still had access. He could have got in there without getting on the public property. But we demoed that side. I moved the bump out all the way to the back. So now, because I tried to get it out of the setback without pushing the whole house over, I tried to get it, so I think I'm within 4 feet. I'm 4 feet from the property line with the corner of the bump out and his walkout. So he's got plenty of room, even if you put a fence up, to access that door, which the walkout really isn't relevant to why he shouldn't or should not. Because, I mean, Gavin's public, just like anybody else that's public would want to walk on that property. I don't see how, if he comes out of his door, takes 4 steps and he's on public property, it's just irrelevant to me. And then the same with like the other things that were brought up on him, like a lot of it's irrelevant. The job of the variance board is, the job of the variance board is, you guys aren't supposed to harbor bias or prejudge an applicant. You can't take all these things that, like, okay, we're just gonna stack all this stuff up against him and then use that to make the decision overall. So, like, every little thing that happened, like the permit, okay, he's a 20-year-old. I could sit here and explain everything that happened all day long from the last meeting, because I've done my homework now. The permit, he's 20. I was letting him handle it on his own. He's excited. He wants to build his own house. course he's excited. He's only 20. He went down there, he turned in his paperwork, he turned in his print. It sat down there for 2 months. He paid his fee, his $700 building fee. They gave him a receipt. He left. 2 months later, Mason's called, hey, we can go right now. Okay. Gavin went over there, thought he had it. Well, here, come to find out, once we called for the inspection, found out that he was missing one paper, a storm and water paper. We didn't know, nobody contacted us, so I called the building department and I asked Scott Tom, I said, why didn't anybody call Gavin? He said it wasn't his job. That's what he told me. I said, he's a 20-year-old, if he's missing a piece of paper and you just got the stuff sitting there for 2 months, wouldn't you make a phone call? But, I mean, that's how that part happened. And then, what else was brought up? Because I know you guys had a bunch of questions for him. I know the permit was the big one, seemed like. And then said I was contacted with options. I was contacted with one option, not options. I'll move, or they'll help me figure out how to move it, like all over a corner. It's not, as I said, it's not the whole property, like the whole house is sitting on the line. It's actually a corner. So, I mean, if I have to, I could shove it over a foot. If you guys are worried about the overhang, I could clip that corner, turn that, it's a front bedroom, it's 12 feet. I could shove it back, make it 11 or however, but trying to change it by 5 feet, what that does to the entire, I mean, you might as well come up with a new house plan. The way that the house is shaped in the front, the look of the house. I mean, you're a builder, I'm a builder. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I got a good reputation in this town. I've done a lot of beautiful work for 25 years, and I'm sure you've made a mistake, but this is just plain out a mistake that happened from the sidewalk thing, finding the 3 pins, being on a peculiar lot. It wasn't done intentionally, like everybody keeps thinking. And then, like, all the other things that keep piled up on him, none of that is even relevant with the variance itself. That's the variance is over the hardship of what it is now, not what he did, what's happening, what's going on, like all this permit stuff that keeps getting thrown at him. So I just want to take him for what it is. I mean, so that's mostly all I have to say. I mean, and I got the answers to the rest of the questions if you want any, but.
It's your time to tell us what you know.
No, like, as I said, I'm just here because of the variance, so I'm not going to bring up the other stuff because I'd rather not. I was just answering kind of the main questions that were brought up with that, but we're just here for the variance, so I'm not bringing up all the other piled up things that didn't even belong in that meeting in the first place. So that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else which speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the request? Seeing none, we'll come back to the board. But my only comment is on the items that were brought up about the building code, fire code, engineering department. Those are all items that should have been taken care of, and they are not relevant to zoning. The zoning question here is the variance of 5 foot is required. I guess my big problem is that the request is for 1 foot 2 inches, I think is the
1 foot 10 inches.
1 foot 10 inches was the request, and it's actually, well, to do it properly, the building is now on the property line plus the overhang, so the request has to be for something greater than that. We don't have the ability to give you a variance to put the overhang across the property line. We would only have the ability to put the variance for where it exists compared to the property line. And as what we've done in the past is when we've had a request for a variance, if they've been minor, if it was the request was for 1 foot 10 inches, not for 3 foot 2 inches, we consider things like that, but this is to be something that's excessive. I don't know how, I don't know how to address it other than the fact that it's an excessive request and it's something I can't support.
Can I say something? Mr. Fight, what if we agree to move the corner back 2 feet, and then that would keep even the overhang a foot off? So the building itself would be 2 feet up back. That way, it turns that front bedroom from 12 foot to 10 foot, and then that keeps the overhang off a foot and keeps the main building off 2 feet. Would that be a possibility?
It's something that we can consider.
Okay.
But again, there's three of us on the board
Right.
today, and my personal is that no, that wouldn't be enough.
Okay. All right.
I think the last time you were here, we talked about approaching the city about an easement, and I
Yeah,
don't know
and-
if that has happened or not.
Yeah, I had, Mr. Brady, when he came out, that was what he said. He said, oh, yeah, looks like you just need a 4-foot easement. Yeah, we give them to people from out of town all the time. He said, that's no problem. Then I was told that he came down and talked to the legal department, not by him. Mr. Brady never called me back, but I was told he came down and talked to the legal department and there was nothing he could do. So that was all I knew from that point. So I didn't really chase any more down on the easement, because it seemed like every avenue we ran down, we were shot down before it even got there. And the easement would be a great idea. I'd love the idea.
To me, that would be your first approach. I think that you have to make some kind of formal request. You have an attorney here, and, something I think should be done to try to obtain that easement. We don't have, I didn't talk to anybody about this after the last time your son was here, so we don't have really any knowledge of all those other things that you spoke about shortly ago. And we're just looking at what we're supposed to do
Yep.
as this body up here. And we're trying to figure out a way to solve your problem. And I think to me, the first approach would be to try to approach the city instead of asking us to grant what's in front of us, which is a foot, which isn't going to do you any good.
Right.
To go back to the city and to see if you can get that easement and find out what their reasoning is.
Oh, I could make a comment. My understanding is that easements are generally for access or utilities, so it's for not a built environment. So an easement wouldn't be relevant for a structure that's over a property line. The only remedy would be to change the property line. My understanding of the reserve property is that it's more complicated than just a specific city property, that the reserve area is part of, in the Cold Creek deeds, it's part of the community access and public recreation area of the Cold Creek neighborhood. And it's more complicated than just the ability to parcel off some of this land to change his property line. So I don't believe an easement is a solution, to my understanding. I don't know if there's an encroachment permitting solution. That is not something that I've heard anybody internally interested in. They were considering if they could remedy the situation on their own lot, and then didn't get back to us except for today. So we haven't had a chance to go back and forth.
Yeah, we got back, we were still working on figuring out how to remedy it, and really not talking, I don't know how to remedy it without talking to you guys, getting information from places. Every time that I did talk to somebody, the only option is move it. So that's why I'm here. Like I was saying, if I could move it 2 feet, that's me giving. And then I've worked on a lot of other jobs in everywhere where a neighbor wanted to put in something and they couldn't, they had to get a variance or an easement or buy property from the neighbor. Well, the neighbor, you had to have the properties the exact same size as was brought up, say the reserve area, public can't give away more land. So it's happened in Huron a couple times where I've done an addition where the neighbor would actually trade part of his land for this land. So the way the angle works out, where if you took that angle in the middle, split it, flip that back triangle, give that to the city, flip the triangle around, make Gavin's lot square just like all the other lots down the hole in most of the development where they're actually a rectangle. Just flipping that one triangle around straightens his lot line out, and then it actually makes that lot straight. And then
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but the suggestion was made that you request to get an easement or something to the city, and to me, what you're gonna need to do is make a formal request, which means you write a letter, tell them here's our problem, this is
Right.
what we need, and what can we do in that regard?
Yep.
And there's several suggestions you have, hey, maybe we can swap some property,
Right.
maybe they'll give you a 5-foot easement. Maybe there's some code, or not code, but there are some covenants because of the subdivision that they can't without making some changes. You have to maybe offer to do the legal work for them to make those changes. I don't know.
Yep.
But for me, sitting here today, and I can't speak for the others, but we were thinking that some type of easement would be
Yeah.
granted. Outside of that, I can't support
Right.
it.
And that's fine, that's what, I did try the easement
My
thing and some of it
suggestion
got
is
shot
that
down.
if you want us to leave it, put it back on the table till you get back to the city with your formal request and get
Yeah.
a formal turn down.
Okay, yep, I'll do that, then I'll
I
just
mean, the
try.
city has said that
She
you
just
can't
said
get
it
an
wasn't,
easement.
we can't do
She's not the city attorney, is what she had heard from others, but you had also said that you did not make a formal request or suggestions to the city, and that would be my suggestion, is then you'd be formally turned down in the form of a letter.
Basically saying you're not gonna get the easement.
Your other choices say, no, we'll just take our chances and let you vote on it.
Table it like that, table.
Table it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we table this issue until such time as the applicant has a chance to formally request whatever it is, easement or whatever else remedy that they may choose to do.
Okay? We have a motion?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The variance request is tabled until you get back to the city and have answers for us.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I personally appreciate what your suggestion is on the swapping of the corners, but I don't know the legal parameters to that side of the scenario. I just wish that had been done before any construction was started. Just my 2 cents.
No, I appreciate that, and that's, like, the predicament came in after we had the foundation up, or else I would've came beforehand. Well, I said, now I'm just trying to figure it out for him, exciting time for him, he's super excited, it's sucked the wind out of him now, you know.
For anybody that wants to live in this city, should be, there's a lot to focus on out there besides for that.
They would happily buy the lot as well, but the city doesn't want to sell it, even though they just bought it, I think, less than 2 years ago, maybe. And at a sheriff's sale, I'm not sure what they intend to do with it, but
Well, it'd be an item that, again, make a formal request with several suggestions to the city. How about this, or this, or this?
yeah, and I understand that.
Because, yes, the house is there, the foundation, or not the house, the foundation is in, be expensive to make a change. There's things that should have been done in advance, that's all past us now because it's there. So we would like to help you the best we can. Approving the variances requested is something that I'm not willing to do. So the next best thing is how can we fix that by basically getting some help from the city, either some type of easement or land swap or change the covenants that are out there. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the issue we brought up, is the city's just has been.
And if we did
Not
move that
uncooperative.
3 feet, then that would be within what we've got wrote on paper, even with the overhang. Would that be passable at another variance meeting?
I can only answer for myself, but without some type of an easement, we're right now dead in the water.
Right, that's what I mean, but like if,
He said,
oh,
The city is also going around to our neighbors and asking if they have any problem with it. Like, they're inquiring for that information. Like,
That might be, but I don't have any letters from anybody. I did have one of the neighbors call me, and I just said, thank you for your input, but unless you show up to the meeting, what you're telling me is mute because it doesn't mean anything. You need to show up here and say, here's my concerns. We have no letters, we have no one else showing up, so if they've done that, I apologize for the city, they shouldn't do that, but that's not an issue. So right now, the ball's back in your court to see what you can work out. Okay, the last item on the agenda is for 1503 Hayes Avenue. It's a variance request from Code 1129.14 to allow the development of a parcel zone RRB residential business lot that does not meet the minimum yard or area requirements for a buildable lot. We have the staff's comments. Is there anything additional?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This site, it's at 1502 Hayes Avenue. It is currently a land bank property that would put the site back to a commercial use. It's not a buildable lot according to our zoning code, but it is a sizable lot according to the built environment in the city of Sandusky. It's a sizable lot according to, the historic building patterns of the city of Sandusky. The applicant desires to put a barber shop. In the pre-meetings to this meeting, we also chose to ask the chief building official just to make sure there wasn't any concerns from a buildable standpoint of the proposal from the applicant, and there are no concerns brought up from the building official. So the applicant, a local barber, would like to place a structure to operate a barber shop on the lot at 1502 Hayes Avenue. The lot is 3,484 square feet, and the minimum buildable lot in an RRB district is 5,200 square feet. It's in the city land bank inventory and was acquired by the city in 2015. And the applicant's seeking variances from the rear yard setback and from the minimum lot size. A site plan approval process would be required through the Planning Commission if a variance is granted, since it's a commercial endeavor. And planning staff supports the requested variance to build on a parcel that does not meet the minimum lot size and dimension requirements at 1502 Hayes Avenue, parcel 57-01272, and suggests the following conditions: that all necessary permits are obtained through building, engineering, and planning departments prior to construction.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this request? If so, if you come to the podium, give us your name and address. Okay, if not, is there anyone who wishes to speak against this request?
Hi, my name is Roger Chambers. I live at 1421 Hayes Ave. I'm for and against it. Currently, it is a blighted property in my eyes because the local people just hang out there with a tent and party in it. My stipulations would be that they have ample parking for it because it's hard parking over on that side of town. But other than that, I'd be okay with it just to keep the people out of that lot. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against the request?
Hi, my name is Yvette Darden. I live at 602 West Osborne Street. That's at the opposite end of that block. Is that why I got a letter?
Yes, you were within the neighborhood that they had sent a notice out to everybody.
Did everybody in the block get a letter?
Anyone within 300 feet of the property lines.
And they just didn't come?
Correct.
Oh, well, so it's gonna take up that whole lot, the barber shop?
You can see the drawing through the chair, if I may. The drawing
Yes.
shows there will be a setback, and the rectangle, large rectangle on the right there would be the barber shop, and then 2 parking spaces with enough drive access to be able to drive into the lot to access the rear parking space. So the shop itself would face Hayes Avenue, and there would be green space or open space around the building.
Okay, I don't have any objections.
Thank you. Back to the board. Any questions, comments?
The access for, I see 2 parking spots. The access for the southeast lot, is that going to be a drive along the southern edge of the shop?
My understanding was it was coming in from Osborne and turning in to access the one that's in the corner. I'm not seeing the dimensions clearly on this drawing. They would have to go through a site plan approval process in order to, and meet parking requirements in order to be able to build it.
So they would have to come back to.
They would
do
go to
something
planning
for the-
commission.
For the parking.
Yeah, they would have a site plan review case at planning commission that would look at the access, parking, the orientation of the site.
I make a motion to allow this variance.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? My only comment is, because we're going to vote, was that I would have preferred if they'd have come with, this is what my plan is, not what, in essence, I don't know if this came from the city or who developed this.
This came from the applicant.
Okay. I'd much rather seen a drawing of this is what we are going to do, is our proposed, as opposed to this is a possibility. That's what concerns me, is
Can it be tabled until they give a better plan?
well, it would have been nice if they were here to,
Yeah.
We had heard from the applicant that he was going to be out of town for this. I believe Alec instructed him to get the variance before he went to planning commission to make sure that he would even be able to pursue that he could build on this lot. He's also working with the land bank to purchase it, so we're trying to help him keep his costs down for architecture before he's sure he can build on whether it's buildable and whether he can purchase it, and then he'll get his site plan approval. So that's my understanding why Mr. Oakes told him to go in this order.
well,
There was a square footage of the building in the application, wasn't there?
no, I don't think so. There was two different sizes of buildings on the lot, and two different ways that they could park.
So the footprint proposed on the application is 14 feet by 32 feet. And we met with him, and he has checked to make sure that that would fit the minimum dimensions of the board of barbershops and all that. It's like cosmetology, because he has to have a certain amount of space per chair. I think there's 2 chairs, and like the sanitary and stuff for hot water. So he's gone through, he understands all those approvals he needs and what the structure needs. And then we met with the chief building official to make sure that he understood that.
3,400.
That's the current size of the lot.
So the building itself is 14 by 32?
That is what I'm reading from his application in the packet. It's a small, like prefabricated structure.
Well, my concern is twofold. Number one is he's asking for a variance to the area, which is almost half of what he needs, which is considerable. And if he's putting something in there that's going to be 2 chairs with him, but he's providing 2 parking places, it's going to, that's a dense area now. I don't see where people are going to park, but those are just my concerns.
Well, that was kind of my question about access to that southeast parking space. If there was room to drive back from Hayes Ave, there'd probably be room for 2 cars there. The owner's car could be farthest in the corner and in a car in front of it in the driveway, and then the other northeast spot. Just what I was thinking as I was looking at the drawing.
I did instruct him when he was working on the site plan that coming from Osborne Street would be better, just to limit the amount of curb cuts on Hayes Avenue, because it's generally a larger travel corridor, and you want to decrease the amount of conflicts you get turning in and out on a site like that. Given the small lots of the historic plat of Sandusky, there's not a lot you could build on this lot that's buildable, and this would put it back to commercial use, which is why planning would support it.
Please come to the podium and give us your name and address.
Hi, I'm Patrick Jureski, and I live at 712 West Osborne Street. I've lived in the neighborhood for 30 years. What existed there before they became an empty lot, I commend you guys for tearing that down. But anyhow, parking is a major issue in our neighborhood. Just generally, Hayes Avenue, Osborne Street, it's very tight. You know, I don't see this as a viable parking plan in my eyes. They already park sometimes 2, 3 deep on that sidewalk.
They park it, yeah, in the boulevard.
Oh, yeah, no, they're parked
on the sidewalk.
they're parked on the sidewalk on a daily basis, so.
Last night, there was 3 cars right across that.
I mean, I could take you pictures of it, you know, so, that's my only concern, really,
Yeah, those
you
people
know.
are gonna park in the parking for the barber shop, they're not gonna care.
And who doesn't come early to their appointment? So, you know, you have 2 chairs, there's 5, 6 cars. So,
Yes, ma'am?
Could you enlarge that picture?
I would too.
Beyond the brick building?
I can't, that's all I've got, is that picture.
Because there is parking allowed on the street side of the sidewalk. I haven't seen any vehicles parked on the sidewalk. I've seen vehicles parked in the big wide concrete surface between the sidewalk and the street.
Well, the problem with, it's called the boulevard, and
Right.
in the boulevard, you're not allowed to park.
Yeah, they have a no parking sign in that little side lot. That's what that sign says, is no parking.
Well, I was under the impression that parking was allowed there. And then across the street from this empty lot is a salon, a hair salon.
The salon is closed.
Pardon me?
The salon is closed.
Oh, well, anyway, it's there, people park. I think they had parking outside the sidewalk on that side of Hayes Ave, the corner lot.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a motion and a second. Are you ready to call the question?
2.
Yeah, it's about getting it.
I'm okay with building a barber shop, please.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too.
It's just.
You can table it until we have a site plan.
It sucks.
Is it preferred to find out, table it, find out, get better site plan?
Where
Well,
they tore down.
Well, if the planning commission is gonna, I don't mind.
they're gonna require,
My house, there's a whole lot required to do.
what's gonna happen is, let's say, you take a vote right now, the 2 of you are gonna vote in favor, and I'm gonna vote against it, which means it turns down, because it has to be unanimous with,
Right, no, all,
so
you would prefer to see,
I would see exactly what he's going to propose.
so that would be better. to
So it's
table it,
viable,
give
it's
them
viable in my
opportunity.
mind to say, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because we're asking for a lot size that's half of what he's allowed, and we're putting a business in here that potentially is gonna have more than the 2 parking places you can propose.
Could he design it a different way?
I'll just
where people
withdraw and we
park
can move to table.
off of Hayes Ave or no?
Okay.
Oh, it's the bus
So-
stop, that's.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to withdraw my motion and change that motion to tabling
So we have better
the
information.
application
And
until
I'll
we have
second
a site plan.
We have a motion and a second to table and to withdraw the original motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes to table. Anything additional for our business?
No, sir.
Okay. A motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
All right.
We are adjourned.